questions.
David, had a couple of slides there about cost. You're comparing costs for local supply against stormwater harvesting. Just wondering, was the treatment of stormwater harvesting the same tomato, or was it different quality?
No, different quality. Yeah. So in that example, the treatment was for non-potable standard.
On your South Bank project, and you had the treatment system set up for that, how much more additional infrastructure would you need to convert that to potable water? I mean, is it just
to potable water?
Yeah, is it like that extra or extra? Are you nearly there, or is it?
I think it's a really hard question to answer. I mean, when you look at the purified recycled water schemes in Brisbane, we boast about the 7 barriers, and so. And some of those barriers may be a little bit tenuous, but the idea is that there's multiple barriers to someone being infected by using this water. And I suppose when you look at South Bank, we've got a reasonably simple filtration system proposed at the moment, which is medium filtration, and we've got UV disinfection. So in a sense, you could argue we may only have 1.5 barriers. If we had membrane filtration, which is what we wanted, but couldn't afford, say ultrafiltration with UV disinfection, then I think you could argue that we had two barriers to pathogens getting through. And I think that, so that's sort of a background to it, but it's like everything, to get approval to consider water as potable, you've got to not only put a system together that's supposedly able to do that, but you've got to prove that it does do that with a lot of testing and a lot of verification. So I suppose at one extent you could say with our little system, if we tested it and found that it was actually drinking water quality, then could we put an argument forward for it to be accepted as drinking water? I suspect not, because for those reasons about the multiple barrier protections. But, and then of course you get into discussions about whether for drinking you really need to put in something like reverse osmosis, just in case, because you don't need to do it on stormwater to remove salts like you do with recycled water, but it removes organic chemicals and pesticides and those sorts of things. So maybe to be on the safe side, that's something you should consider. And then, then you can go into other treatment processes as well. So if you took it that way, it puts us less than halfway towards potable standard.
Next question.
You alluded to the, I guess, the impact that stormwater harvesting might have on receiving waters. Is there any studies in place to assess that? Like if you're taking the roof water off and then the surface water runoff away from the downstream receiving waters, are there studies in place to assess that?
I think there are. I'm not able to quote any, but I think there's been quite a lot of work done to prove that by having essentially in-catchment detention, that you do have discharge quality benefits. By having detention, you reduce your storm flow peaks, so you have an impact on the hydrograph, and you reduce the volume of water discharged. And so if the load of pollutants discharged is a function of volume and concentration, then you're reducing the load of pollutants discharged from the catchment. So I think that's the basic theory to me behind that. But then you go into this frequent flow stuff, which is looking at not peak flow rates, but the frequency and magnitude of the frequent flows, the small flows. And I think the idea of stormwater harvesting there is to reduce the nature of those discharges from the catchment.
Could I just add one point there? In terms of ecosystem health,
yeah,
a lot of our learnings are actually imported from Victoria. And just as David said about frequent flows, under normal conditions, pre-development, we're talking perhaps 5 to 10 runoff events per year. Post-development, 40 to 50 runoff events per year. So frequent flow objective is to try to turn that urbanised catchment back into a pre-urbanised catchment. But have we actually got evidence to show that by doing so, we actually protect our ecosystem health of our creeks? The answer in South East Queensland, the answer is no, and we're working on it. And I can assure you it's a lot harder question than we ever thought it was going to be.
Well, though we do know the ecosystem health in our urbanised catchments is much worse for the bugs when the catchment can still look quite good. So those things may be having an effect, the kind of effect we anticipate.
Final question.
Just wanted to ask a question. With the stormwater harvesting systems that you're installing, are you doing any pre-treatment or pre-testing of the soil that you're actually putting these systems into to investigate the condition of where you're installing it, to make sure there's no contribution of the existing environment to the stormwater systems?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
So you're installing a harvesting system.
Yeah.
You're putting it in situ.
Yes.
Are you testing the condition of the soil that you're actually installing these systems into to make sure they're not going to have a harmful or negative effect on the stormwater fluid?
Well, in the case of South Bank, it's a concrete, the storage tank is a concrete box, so there won't be any infiltration. There'll be monitoring of the run-up, so we'll pick up on anything that's coming out of the catchment. And when we did some early work on the flows there was some base flow in the drains, which suggests some groundwater infiltration, so that there's potential for some effects there. But the data from that didn't indicate a particular issue. With the Fitzgibbon one, we haven't got to the point of designing the storage basin in any detail. So we haven't made decisions about how that will be sealed, but I would have expected it to be sealed one way or another to avoid exfiltration. And so, that would have benefits on inflow. And along the way, I guess we will need to look at soil conditions from a construction perspective, which may pick up on those sorts of issues. But I can't say it's an issue we've thought about in any great detail.